Welcome to Thrive, Lead, Succeed. I'm your host, Sandy Hokanson, Executive Coach and CEO of Sound Leadership. It's great to have you all with us today. Today, we're going to discuss how to create a global network and also create global influence. And we've got an amazing guest with us today, Dr. Jennifer Decker, and I'll be introducing Jennifer in just a moment. For those of you that are new to the circle, I started this circle as a forum for leaders to stay in touch with each other and inspire each other by learning from each other. So everyone on this call today is committed to lifelong learning and committed to their own leadership practice and being the best leader they can be. And when leaders share with us on this circle, it's their way of paying it forward to other leaders that are coming up and sharing their stories. So we really appreciate the leaders that take the time to actually share on the circle and share their expertise and their stories. You can find previous circle sessions on my website at soundleadership.ca/resources. And if you missed our last session, we had a conversation about how to continue to drive sales leadership forward in unprecedented times, particularly in 2020. And we spoke with Chief Global Sales Officer Andrea Sugden, who did an amazing job walking us through what she has had to adapt and change to this year to continue to drive leadership forward. And you can find her session either on my website or on my YouTube channel. Okay, so today Jennifer's with us already here in our quorum. I'm thrilled to introduce Dr. Jennifer Decker to you. I will let you know that Jennifer and I actually grew up together. We were just reminiscing a little bit about that, and we've been lifelong friends. So it's actually really a pleasure of mine and kind of fun for me today to have Jennifer as our guest. Jennifer is a distinguished physicist with over 20 years experience working at the National Research Council. She's now on assignment. This is her second time in Germany, on assignment in Germany. Her current assignment is consul and principal advisor at the Canadian Consulate in Munich. And she's the perfect person to share with us on how she has created a global network and how it's impacted her career and her ability to influence. So she joins us today from Munich, Germany. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you so much for this invitation. I've always really admired your executive leadership, and it's a real privilege for me to be with you today in this conversation. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Okay, let's dig right in. So I think people, we've had a lot of business leaders, obviously, primarily speak on the circle. But we do have some not-for-profit members and as well as, and some NGOs. But today, I think we're going to have, it's going to be a little different take on having a scientific leader join us and share a little bit, and particularly one that has a global mandate and is working in another country. So I think it'd be great to just start us off. Just tell us a little bit about your international role right now and what you do for the National Research Institute.
Yeah, thank you. I work, so really aware of the audience coming from also a business background. I represent the National Research Council of Canada in Germany, and I cover all of Germany, even though my office is located in Munich. I work very closely with other government departments, and in particular, very closely with Global Affairs Canada, who staffs the Canadian Embassy in Berlin and also the consulate in Munich. Also co-located in Munich is Ontario Trade and Invest. So a lot of my colleagues in Munich, in our office at the consulate, are trade commissioners. In Berlin, of course, there's also foreign direct investment advisors, as well as Ontario Trade and Invest. But I also work with other regional government organizations. Quebec and Alberta are very busy also in Germany. I work with German Länder governments like Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, and many, many others. And I work with also companies interested in research and development and innovation and matchmaking. So many levels of federal governments, provincial, regional governments, and other business organizations and associations.
Great. So it's really a broad-reaching goal across many different parts of our economy, and global economies too, not just country-specific. So when you started out early in your career, I guess a question I had was, did you ever think you'd be stationed overseas? Like, did you plan to have an international career? What started you thinking about that?
Yeah, I didn't expect to have a global career. I was very interested in physics and optics at the time. And when I did my graduate studies, and my thesis director, Professor Silang Chin at Laval University, he encouraged all of his graduate students to do postdocs in other countries and learn about other styles. And he particularly was impressed by the really different style in Germany. I think in a lot of North American laboratories, the work style in the lab is very quick and dirty, and we try things and have discussions and then try things really quickly. Whereas the approach in Germany, to a large extent, is very long-term planning of experiments. And so I think both styles you find in all laboratories, but perhaps an emphasis on one style or another. And so it was really his encouragement to try and do some work. You know, spend some time in a laboratory in a foreign country and just kind of absorb their approach to doing science. So that's what got me interested in doing some work in another laboratory. And eventually I was able to go to Germany and work as a guest researcher in the National Measurement Institute in Germany.
Okay, great. As with many of our career moves, for many of us, sometimes it's a prodding from a mentor or a sponsor that gets us on our way and just opens up a door we never really thought we would explore. So tell us a little bit about what steps you took to prepare for an international opportunity when you started to create your global network. What are some of the things that you kind of focused on there to build this network and to prepare yourself?
Well, I think certainly it helps to have an interest. I was always, when we were talking about reminiscing about our lives when we were high school students, I was always very interested in languages. And so for me, I looked at it as something really positive if I had the chance to, move to Quebec City and learn to speak French, or go to Germany and learn to speak German. So for me, that was kind of an exciting aspect. And then I think as a researcher, your network does tend to be very international. But for me, I spent some time working with standards, and especially with my background in measurement science, the Canadian Standards Association and International Standards Organization. And this is for, let's say, companies who would like to sell technology products and make sure that their products are meet international standards for trade purposes, for international trade. And I guess a lot of my work was making contributions as technical expert, but I also then took up the opportunity to do some leadership roles, and I chaired a Canadian Mirror Committee for nanotechnology standards at the time when nanotechnology was very new, and also got to work with a lot of other Canadian federal departments like Health Canada, Environment Canada, when everyone was still looking at how nanotechnology, what it was and how it was going to impact our lives and the markets, and then started working, interfacing with other companies who were developing nanotechnologies. So all that to say that for me, my pathway was really working in standards and also working in my role for calibration. So working with companies in some of those new technology areas. And through my network in the Canadian government and also the regional governments, the provincial governments, I was invited to apply for the position as the counselor at Canada's embassy. And I think my network through the nanotechnology standards and technology development at that time was really instrumental in winning that position, because I was able to leverage actually the networks that I made as a researcher and also as a participant in standards development.
Yes, and I remember you also did quite a few speaking engagements when you were asked. If someone asked you, I know you've traveled through the U.S. and to different places, you know, that were just building up your repertoire really and your contribution of saying yes. You know, leaders sometimes we have to say yes to things, even when our schedule is busy and we're already maxed out and we're maybe even a little bit uncomfortable putting ourselves in a new situation like that. You have to say yes. So
absolutely. There were quite a few, let's say, associations, industry associations, also technology associations like Optical Society of America. But I think you're absolutely right. When you get invited to give a talk or any of the conferences that look like they're in your area, it's really important to participate. And then when you go to actually ask questions and meet people, and that's really the best way to find out what's going on and to learn about new trends, which is, I think, the real benefit of one of these networks, is to really stay informed about what's going on, policy development and new technology trends or new products that are coming up.
Yes, yes. I think it was one of my colleagues used to always say, you know, you need to be a student of your own profession. And so that is really important. The industry associations, I think, are one of the real ways that all of us can really excel and go deeper into what we do. So you talked about some of the benefits of a network. You talked about that, like keeping up on trends. What are some of the other, why do you think it's important really for leaders to grow a network broader than their kind of local network?
Well, I think especially what we're seeing today is a lot of leveraging of programs. So as a leader, it's really important to be aware of what's going on out there in terms of how you might be able to contribute. And I think we're seeing in the pandemic a really, a global village. We're hearing a lot about what's going on in other countries. And I think, your network helps you stay abreast of what's being developed so that you can be participate in global value chains, for example. We're seeing a lot of the vaccine developments and these kinds of products, but I think it goes for any kind of product sector. So being aware of what the trends are, the policies are, and I would say that was a big part of what I did at the embassy and what my role is at the consulate. I work very closely with the Global Affairs Canada Trade Commissioner Service. And the trade commissioners are all about helping Canadian companies globalize their business and their products, and they help stay aware of what are global policies, or let's say in your target country. But also, I guess, listening to what's what's hot or what actually might not be such a good idea to introduce to a market. And I think learning about the culture and the areas of priority is really important when you're trying to develop partnerships. And in research, and I think in a lot of innovation, we look for complementarity, where the sum is greater than the parts. So you have some capabilities or capacities, and you're looking for partners that have complementary capacities, so that when you come together, you can really be highly competitive. And I think using your networks is a great way to identify these potential partners.
I love that. I'm writing some notes here. I love the global value chain, that sequence of words there. And I love partners, complementary capacity. And these are these are words that we're using inside large global organizations as well, right? I mean, organizations now are so matrixed, and leaders today are having to work across, geographical boundaries, business line boundaries, matrix reporting, these are very complex structures, and we're always looking to add value. And what is the leverage that we can take, and how can we add value to other business lines and other partners within organizations? I mean, right now we're talking about outside your own organization, but it's interesting to me that it just struck me, these are the same kinds of skills that are required in complex, large organizations. So excellent. That was really got some really good things out of that discussion. So what other things can you recommend for other leaders to grow their networks today?
I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially during our pandemic. We're seeing a lot of opportunities to participate in events or trade missions. For example, I'm thinking of webinars. Our colleagues National Research Council, we hosted a webinar with colleagues in Natural Resources Canada and Global Affairs on hydrogen and the upcoming hydrogen economy. But we're seeing also virtual trade missions where companies can meet, for example, technology clusters in Germany, and there's a medical technologies trade mission coming up early in 2021, for example. And a lot of these international events, the partnering is often held in English language. So even if there is, let's say, your interest in Germany, you don't necessarily have to speak German to be able to partner with German companies or German laboratories. Oftentimes, English is the language that's spoken at conferences and for business. I used to, working in the laboratory, the language on the ground in the laboratory was always either German in Germany or French at Université Laval. But when you actually are in a more international context, then English is totally fine. So with the pandemic, and because people aren't traveling, there's so many events that are actually open to you just have to register. A lot of them are free of charge. You don't need to pay any registration. And a great opportunity to meet new partners. We actually held some specifically partnering events. We had a funding call on advanced manufacturing and artificial intelligence, and hosted a partnering event where companies and laboratories could give a 1-minute pitch about who they were and the kind of project they wanted to do. And then within the virtual forum, the participants could exchange messages with each other. And so if you met somebody or saw something that you thought was interesting, you could have a one-to-one conversation with them afterwards. So I think, participating in these kinds of events is a great way to find out what's going on in other countries globally. Or actually now what we're seeing is a lot of organizations teaming up and hosting joint events like webinars. And that's a great way to raise the profile of what it is that you're doing, provide some, advertisement, and now with little short films that you can do in webinars or even on LinkedIn and Twitter, we're seeing a lot more of that, of people really showing what their capabilities are. And I think there's such a huge audience with the pandemic. People are home, people are, surfing from their computer. And I think the challenge right now is actually being really selective in prioritizing what it is that you can participate in, because there are so many opportunities. And it is my job at National Research Council to help connect people. And so, of course, if people are interested in innovation in Germany, I'm more than happy to help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that was great. You hit on a lot of really good points. Can you just explain for us non-science people You talked earlier about, you were on the forefront of nanotechnology, and I think we all kind of know where that led and is leading and is in our day-to-day lives. But can you talk a little bit about the hydrogen economy you just mentioned? Just take a minute on that for us to put it in kind of more practical business terms of what that is or what that will be.
That's a good question. That's a tough one to start on, but I think there's a lot of initiative. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, and I'm just looking for kind of applications of what would look like for business people here.
Yeah, well, hydrogen is an opportunity to use hydrogen as a clean fuel instead of as a replacement for fossil fuels. And National Research Council and Natural Resources Canada just launched a brand new laboratory in the Toronto area in Mississauga, also collaborating with some Canadian companies like Xerox and others, also in collaboration with the University of Toronto. And the goal is to develop new materials to accelerate being able to use hydrogen as a fuel, let's say as a replacement for fossil fuels. Okay. And a lot of governments around the world are trying to address the climate change, with as much impact as possible and looking for low carbon alternatives to fossil fuels. And hydrogen is one opportunity where it can be made in Canada through the technology development to use perhaps mining capacity to produce hydrogen, or to use hydroelectricity to produce hydrogen also. So it could be produced in a very clean way. And the Canadian government will be making an announcement about a hydrogen strategy in the next short little while. But I think that this is an opportunity for not only technology development, but also companies to look at how we can transform what we currently use fossil fuels, so transportation and other ways that we use energy, and how it can be replaced by fuel cells or batteries, and maybe in Canada we have the benefit of electricity. So clean ways for us to do the same things that we always did with fossil fuels. And we're seeing a lot of strategies that are really tied to a green economy or greening the economy, particularly post-pandemic. And I think it touches all of the aspects, not only the production of hydrogen, but also thinking about fueling stations. So changing the infrastructure from fossil fuel, gas stations to hydrogen, and also in companies using other types of let's say robotic equipment or thinking about buses and trucks that could use batteries or fuel cells instead of fossil fuels. Right, go ahead.
Oh, thank you for that. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I was just saying, and I appreciate you just expanding on that a little bit. So I think we all kind of got the link probably to climate and green. But it was really nice hearing that fleshed out a little bit so that we could really understand all the sectors it interacts with, all the companies that are involved in this, all the future forward thinking leadership that's required to do the research, to develop the strategies, to, prepare now to what the next, what the next production line is going to look like. And these are all, these are long-term cycles in business planning. So that just kind of exciting to think about. That's one of the things that networks do, is make sure that you're aware of all of these latest developments and trends and the science that sometimes is required behind it. And just to start thinking about all of our client bases and how they might be shifting and what will be affecting them down the road and what we need to prepare for as leaders. And that's one of the huge benefits of the network. So thank you, Jen, for taking that one on the fly there. We've talked a lot about networks. I want to talk about influence a little bit and tie those two together, because when we were coming up with our topic today, we really they're interconnected, right? Creating is interesting because creating the network requires some influence, but the network itself provides and leverages the influence and brings you to a different stage of influence. So, so how has it helped you create influence and wield influence by having this greater network?
I think it helps to, let's say, reinforce messages. And I think I think about some of maybe the most influential activities that I've been participating in. I've been with other partners, and especially if you're trying to raise the profile of your own brand, to have joint events or joint initiatives with other partners where that have similar priorities or branding that you would like to be associated with also. And I think by listening to the other people in your network or organizations in your network, and when you find organizations that have very minded areas that are of priority or that you'd like to develop, then it is an opportunity to have joint events or to partner up on projects where it's a win-win. So by listening to what it is that are the concerns or priorities of your partner and matching those with your own and coming up with ways where you'd be able to meet both of the needs, or in our case, dealing with the public. So publicizing, what are your interests, what are your priorities, and a lot between Canada and Germany, we see would like to raise awareness for the activities that we're doing to address climate change, as an example, and so hydrogen was an example. And I think by communicating through your network, you're able to, I guess, amplify your message, particularly when you're partnering in activities. And I think also about clusters. This is also about how technology clusters work by companies and organizations coming together that have very similar areas of interest that complement each other. And by kind of attaching yourself to a larger entity, you're able to have a little bit more reach, and more profile, and also it gives you the opportunity to talk about and really express what you're interested in maybe closer conversation with other organizations, to be able to influence the way that they're thinking. It's through a lot of these, through a lot of personal conversations and relationships and trust relationships, that we can have the conversations about of course, in science, we think about policy issues or technology development and technology vision, and sharing with other partners in your network and developing relationships is really how you can, over a long term, influence others.
Great. My pen was busy there writing down so many little nuggets that you shared with us. But I think that one of the big takeaways here is it really helps amplify your message, you said. I love that word, amplify. So what takes, when you're creating influence and building influence, you do want to have more influential power, just so to speak. So being able to amplify your message with like-minded people, or even just to create that influence to persuade them is powerful. One thing you said early on there that I really liked as well was around branding. So maybe there are people in your network that have a brand, or like you say, maybe it's a technology cluster brand or something in there that you really want to hang your hat on, that you want to be associated with, that you want to, raise your profile to be, to create more visibility around. So the network allows you to identify that and then try to align closely with those brands. So that was very powerful too. But ultimately it came down to around relationships, and it is, right? I mean, these are just about relationships with people, building strong relationships with people, and except doing it on a global scale. And we all know that that is the secret sauce, building those trusting relationships with people is how we all create influence. So that was great. Thank you. So let's switch just here as we start to, I'm going to, after this question, just open it up and see if there's any questions out there. So maybe you could start thinking about some questions, everybody, if you want to ask a question of Jennifer. But I want to open it up and just ask about COVID and 2020. And given the levels of disruption that leaders have faced this year, does this create even more urgency or value add around creating a network? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think there is, in COVID, we've seen kind of an acceleration of, particularly in technology, of wanting to, of needing to develop. And in Canada, for example, personal protective equipment, there was a real acceleration in the development of that supply chain. And I think during the pandemic, it does provide this opportunity. We have seen a lot of Canadian companies who really rose to the challenge of revectoring their production lines to make equipment or hand sanitizer. And certainly the federal government has been really supportive of those companies who've wanted to do technology development to address the pandemic. I think because now everything is virtual, I mean, a second real benefit or opportunity is just the number of conferences and virtual partnering that's available. You don't have to travel now to really have some exposure to international opportunities. Everything is being done online. And so this is really a great opportunity to reach out and maybe try some areas that you haven't tried before and expand out. I think the third thing that we're seeing is this policy government addressing post-pandemic economy, what it will look like, what are some areas that the governments are interested in terms of how the economy will grow again post-pandemic. And in the technology area, it's interesting to see some of the high tech, for example, quantum. So as much as greening the economy is a target for many of the governments, European Union and Germany in particular, and in Canada, but also we're seeing some really high technology areas like quantum computing, and key distribution. So cybersecurity topics. A lot of these topics that are really kind of fresh. And I think for a lot of companies, really keeping a pulse on what is going to be in demand, it's a great opportunity through virtual events, conferences, partnering, trade missions is a great way to see how it's actually going to shake down as the pandemic progresses and afterwards, where are going to be really the strong sectors of our economy.
Great. That's so important to start thinking about that, right? How do we build back? What's it going to look like? How do we build back? How do we take this time to, really catapult ourselves into the next phase of the economy? Great. So thank you for that. Are there anyone that you've had some time now to think about a question for Jennifer? I'd like to open it up. You can just unmute yourself if you'd like to ask Jen a question. Anyone have a question for Jen here? Okay. I've got one that's come in here, actually through chat that was sent to me. So, so Jennifer, where do you go next? Just a more personal question for you. What's next for you in your global career, and are you, maybe you could share a little bit about how long you're in Germany for, and then what are you looking to do next?
Oh, that's a really good question. My posting is until 2023, and so it's very typical to have a 4-year posting. And then after that, I have to say I'm not really sure what my next move will be. I've been involved in a career with National Research Council since 1992. I worked there as a researcher. As soon as I finished my PhD, I started working as a researcher for 20 years, and then I moved on to doing science partnering. When I worked at the embassy, I was on an interchange, so still with National Research Council. And then I did some work negotiating partnering agreements between National Research Council and academia. So I've had quite a few different careers actually within the NRC. So I can imagine myself maybe pivoting again my career and still within the National Research Council as of course, as a government organization, it also continues to evolve based on our government priorities. I think one area the NRC in the last few years has been much more collaborative, which has been a huge benefit to me, because science partnering, it means that that's the kind of work that I get to continue doing. And I imagine if NRC keeps going in this direction, that there might be some other science or research or innovation partnering opportunities that would come up after this posting. So we'll see. And I think we're also seeing a lot of the federal government departments working more closely together. The hydrogen is a great example, where National Research Council and Natural Resources Canada are working really closely together with academia and Canadian industry to really turn the corner on some really disruptive technologies that will change the way our energy sector runs. And that might also be some really exciting opportunities. So we'll see when as it comes up, we'll see what's available.
Well, one thing's for sure, you're well positioned with your extensive global network and the influence that you have. And it was interesting to hear the word disruption. I'm not sure if either one of us had said that yet on this call, but of course, that is one thing we all know for certain, is there's more disruption ahead. We just, if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that, and it's here to stay, and to embrace that. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that we are well networked, and that we are creating these clusters of influence. So it's just been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. It's always wonderful to see you, my friend. But it's just been great to hear about your journey and your insights into how other leaders can create a global network and leverage influence in their career. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer. It was really great to have you with us.
Thank you, Sandy. It's been really a sincere pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great. So thank you. So we're just going to leave you here with a little reflection here for yourselves. So maybe just think about, for each of you on the phone, how well networked you are outside of your immediate responsibility and your immediate geographical area. And also just what relationships and partnerships can you leverage to build a broader international network? Jennifer mentioned the word partnerships many times today, and that is one of the skills really of the kind of what we call the kind of transformative leader, is to create alliances and to leverage partnerships. So that's really important to start thinking about. And what opportunities do you have to just start thinking about more international exposure? And if it's not international, even if it's just broader in your geography through your associations. So those are just some things to keep in mind. Our next time that we get together for the circle is February. We always take the month of December off. And next year, we'll be having 3 in the first half of the year, up until June, we'll be having 3 circles together. The next one is February 24th at 12 noon. And my special guest is Ms. Tyra Tudor, President and CEO of TAD PGS Inc. So we'll look forward to a fantastic call at the beginning of the year with Tyra. As always, if you want to reach out to me and discuss anything, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the circle. I wish all of you happy holidays coming up as best we can through COVID. And for my American colleagues joining me today, happy Thanksgiving first, and then happy holidays. So best wishes, everyone. I will see you again on the circle in 2021, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.